Team MDT, we're here to talk to you today about some of the things that pro shooters will do that maybe newer shooters may not think of.
We are MDT. We design, test, and create precision rifle chassis and accessories to help you shoot better.
Slide the fader over and pick a time frame. It gives you average miles per hour and the direction. So I'll show up to a match kind of knowing what the wind average is going to be, and I will also look every hour and see if there's going to be a forecasted change in direction or intensity. I'll kind of have that in the back of my mind, and then I'll be looking for it to happen throughout the day.
Verify the ranges. Yes, your matchbook is more than likely correct, but everybody makes mistakes and sometimes those ranges are incorrect, and it's your score that's going to suffer if you're wrong. So if you get the chance, take the time and measure every target of every stage that you're going to shoot, and it'll save you some points.
The next thing we're going to want to do is use the sectors tool to capture our target direction for each of the individual targets and our wind. So after we've confirmed each of our yardages to plus or minus 2 to 3 yards, we need to create a direction of fire and a wind solution. So we'll capture the target's direction to within a few degrees, and then we'll capture a wind speed and direction to within a few degrees and miles per hour. So right now I'm looking at a 583 yard shot, and the wind's at approximately 250 degrees or coming from around 9 o'clock. And it would be about a 3 mile per hour. So now I have both an elevation hold of 3.3 mils and a wind hold of approximately 0.3 mils under these conditions.
One thing I always like to do is measure the target widths, and I'm just going to go and measure the widths of the targets, and then I'm going to use that to generate my wind brackets. So if the targets I'm shooting today end up being 0.5 mils wide, I'm going to convert that into miles per hour and say today that might be 3 mile an hour difference. But if I'm shooting 4/10 wide targets, then my wind brackets, or the difference between my wind holds on my card, might end up only being 2 miles per hour.
If we're going to shoot off of these 5 rocks to a target, I'm going to do 2 or 3 different things in my rehearsal phase. First is just identify each of the positions I can shoot from, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, I'm going to get an approximate visual from each of the locations. So from this lowest rock, I'm just going to see what I look like from that position and make sure that my body is physically capable of getting down to it. Then I'll move to the next position, again, get an eye line, and then repeat that through all of those 5 positions. Now I want to come up with my shoot plan. The shoot plan is sort of a dry rehearsal where I'm thinking position 1, that target, 1, 2, dial to the next target, pick up gun, transition, and walk through how I would transition from each prop. It's important to note that in our sport, we're not allowed to touch props before we shoot on them. So I'm standing a healthy distance away from the prop. I'm not gonna come up and start touching things intentionally because that's deemed kind of unsportsmanlike in our sport.
Let's say you have a wobbly prop where if you're using tripod rear, you may not get through all your shots in time. Or if you use a bag, you may get all your shots off in time, but maybe you may not hit as many because it's wobbly. So in those kinds of situations, it's always a cost-benefit analysis that the pros are doing. Me personally, I'm always going to take the most stable shots that I can, and if I don't get through them all, then that's fine.
All right, so the first thing you do when you come up to the stage, the RO is going to ask you, do you understand the course fire? After that, they're going to ask you to load and make ready. The first thing I do is put my magazine in, remove my chamber flag, stick it in my pocket, and I check my first round. I want to make sure that this round is fully seated in my mag and it looks normal. That's one of the things I do every single time because I've seen a lot of people start the stage and then they have a mag issue or they have a feeding issue on that first round. Then I'm going to look from tip to tail of my rifle. I'm checking the muzzle brake to make sure it's tight and or suppressor. I'm going to look at my dope card, make sure my dope is dialed. I'm going to check my parallax, I'm going to check my windage. I'm going to make sure that my timer is on, make sure my send it level is on, and then the last thing I do is check my magnification. If everything's good to go, I'm going to say, shooter understands course fire and shooter is ready. I will pick up my bag, get my thumb on the timer and ready to start it. And as soon as the RO says engage or the timer beeps, then I will engage, start my timer, and start the stage.
As we get into a target, you can see if I move this, it may not look like much. If I just put a little bit of motion into this or pressure into this rifle, I'm getting a little bit of movement out of this wagon. If I start pushing into the gun too hard, I'm gonna end up inducing some miss left or right, high or low of the target. I'm watching my reticle to understand where the reticle moves. Does it look normal? And if it doesn't look normal, as I've seen hundreds and hundreds of times before, I'm gonna assume that I did something to induce that problem. Was it shoulder pressure? Was it grip pressure? Was it trigger and press and follow through? Was my bag hand or my pressure through my front hand incorrect? And as you assess each of those components and make sure that you did everything right, then we're gonna start looking for rifle issues if it's a repeatable, constant problem.
It's a natural human tendency to train the things that you're good at, to go out, to hit targets and everything else. But if you spend the time on the things that you're terrible at, that's the way you improve. For me, this low kneeling position is very, very tough for me. It's something I've been spending a lot of time on. On that point, if you're hitting most of the targets you're shooting at while you're training, you're not training on small enough targets. And if you're making all your par times in training, you're not pushing your time standards enough.
Here I have two types of ammo. These are the same projectiles and components. They're both 140 hybrids. But when we test ammo or when we're looking for a load, I'm testing them in 50 lot batches to make sure that the same components with one change net to an actual difference. I'm also buying these in the thousands of projectiles, so I'll order them even if it takes a year or two to get them. When I know that they work, I want the same lot of components.
What I see newer shooters do a lot of times at matches is try to emulate what the pros do. And while I'm not telling you not to emulate us, I'm trying to tell you to be comfortable and be confident in the things that you're good at. If you've never tried tripod rear before, a match is not the place to start. You should get good at a bag first and then use that, what you're comfortable with, and make sure that you do the best you can with that. Sometimes you're only going to get 8 out of 10 shots off, but at least there'll be something that you're confident with and you can make impacts instead of trying to get all 10 shots off and missing 5 or 6 of them.
Another thing that you see pros doing is spending a lot more time on glass, either A, spotting for other people and calling impacts, but more importantly, they're integrating as they're spotting and transitioning, looking at target 1, looking at target 2, looking at target 3. The more time you spend on glass, the more time you're seeing shots, the more familiar you are with the order, the sequence, and the background and environment that those targets live in, and the more successful you'll be when you shoot.
When we're on prone stages, those are some of the most important stages that we have in a match. Not because they're the most stable, but because we're able to track our elevation constantly through stages. If we see that bullet hit 5.1 or just a tenth higher than we expect, and the next target the same, and the next target the same, we start to identify and true that out of our solver for those days' conditions and our rifle system. One of the things we do that's very important to our consistency, once we find a load and a bullet that work, or a combination of equipment that work, we do not change it. We may vary the powder charge a couple tenths of a grain for a specific barrel, but all said and done, we don't change bullets, we don't change powders, we don't change primers, we don't change brass. We simply take a recipe that we have that works and run with it all season, if not longer.
And one of the things that we always recommend is to finding shooting a mentor that can help you along, push you and drive you to be better. That's why I have these guys. They're at a level I'm trying to get to.
It doesn't always have to be someone better. It could be someone that always shows up and somebody that will force you to go to the range even on that crappy rainy day, or go to that match that you almost didn't go to, which you ended up winning because you went and the other person pushed you. So just get out there and shoot, find people that push you, and have fun.